people that haven't heard this, but word coming out of Berea that Josh Gordon, after he was arrested, remember he was arrested for a DWI. We talked about that with the 4th of July holiday when he was down in North Carolina. Word now coming out, Fox Sports 1 actually broke it, that he spent the 2 weeks following that in a rehab facility in California, that him and the Browns, they reached out to him, he reached out to them, some other people as well. They put this together and they got him into a place for a couple of weeks. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously, I think any kind of help is a good thing, but I think being in the dark, a lot of the media and fans were not sure where things stood, and I think that shows that clearly, the Browns, forgetting as a player, haven't given up on helping him, and, who knows where things go, but I thought that was a good thing because up until now, that had not been reported.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that too, and that it just now came out. But that's a very good sign. Obviously, he needed some help, and he reached out and he got that help, and hopefully, it's going to be a continuing process. And it's just nice to know that, people are taking the situation seriously, and hopefully he's taking it seriously, realizing what an opportunity he has, in his life, or an opportunity that most of us can only dream of, and for him to be able to, grasp it and not to let it get away, and just for his own, personal health. So it's good to see that, some of the players said, I talked to him, and, I'm not going to tell you what we talked about, but I reached out to him, a couple of players said that. So it's good to see that people are all rowing the boat in the same direction. It's going to be strange because he's probably going to be coming to camp only to probably be leaving as soon as the suspension comes down. I think it's kind of strange that we were actually at the beginning of camp and we still don't know about his suspension, but that might end up actually possibly playing into his favor considering the last suspension we just heard about,
Well, yeah, we'll have to see about that. I actually had some interesting discussions on our Facebook page the last couple of days. Some people seem, for as many Browns fans hold out hope that the suspension gets cut with the appeal, I talked to some people yesterday from a completely different side, and it really makes sense the more I think about it, that there may be more coming beyond that, because I could see a scenario, and this is, just looking at worst case maybe instead of best case, where he gets the 1-year suspension because, John McMullen and I talked about this last week. The DWI, and however that shakes itself out, is not, in good or bad, going to be figured in on this, because this suspension is for something totally different and the appeal is strictly about the 1-year suspension. But I can see him actually missing more than 1 year, because I believe they're going to deny his appeal. And not even if he had done nothing wrong in the offseason. I believe they're going to deny his appeal because they already cut him slack last year. If they hadn't, then they may cut him some this year. But the fact that he's already asked for a break and gotten it once, I don't see them doing it again. So I think he gets the year, but I could see a case. Look at a lot of the DUIs that we've seen, 2-game suspensions, because those are just as bad as beating your woman unconscious and dragging her out of an elevator. But we've seen DUIs getting some 2-game suspensions and things. I could see perhaps 2 to 4 more games, depending on how that shakes out criminally, for that after, when he applies for reinstatement and then has that tacked on top of it. So I wouldn't be surprised, just as much if he got it cut, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2 or maybe 4 games longer.
That's right. It's really kind of strange because, he does have a lot of stuff stacked up, and he's eventually going to have to pay for all that. But the one thing that just seems really jarring is the thing you mentioned about Ray Rice and how he just got, for the Ravens,
don't get me going on that.
I know, you probably was talking about, but for just 2 games, we're going to see him come back against us in week 3, and we're going to have, Gordon out. Of course, he did do the things that he did, and, but as far as, a physical harm to somebody, obviously what Rice did was much worse. I mean, thank God that, Gordon didn't, run anybody over with his car, but it's really it's like the NFL has really kind of painted themselves into a corner and making themselves look pretty bad considering the suspension that's going to come down on Gordon compared to Rice. And I don't see why they put themselves in such a bad position. It didn't give Rice at least half the season off for that.
Jeff, I 100% agree with you. I was adamant about this yesterday, and I would gladly go right back into it. I mean, and then I was even more disgusted at listening to NFL Network pat Roger Goodell on the back and say he showed the iron fist and that there will be no slack here. You're kidding me, right? You show the iron fist. Ray Rice shouldn't see the field for as long as these, 1-year pot smoking suspension. And I have to be careful with that because I don't want anybody to think that I believe Josh Gordon is suspended for a year just for smoking pot. I don't. I know that that's not why he's suspended for a year. But regardless, I mean, there's people that could fail a drug test right now for pot that will miss 4 games of the next season. That's 2 games more than Ray Rice will miss for what he did. Disgusting. I'm sorry. That's disgusting, man. I can't believe it. And then they pat themselves on the back like they did something. Alden Smith,
right.
Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy should not be allowed to play football this year, in my opinion. That man should not be. I don't want him in my league. Come back in a year. If Josh Gordon's got to come ask me to come back in a year, then so should Greg Hardy. You know what I mean? These guys, we're talking about some egregious assaults, some life-threatening situations, and guys that get caught smoking pot or even steroids, which I don't agree with at all, but it's their own body that they're putting at risk. These guys are periods of time, longer periods of time than the guy who grabs his prize antelope and drags her out of the elevator in Vegas.
Right, and it's, like I said, all these things are bad, but what I was saying before is it might actually play in Gordon's favor because whatever lawyer, whatever representative is going to be arguing on Gordon's behalf, he's got to come out and say, well, it wasn't as bad as this or this that we've seen from other people. It would almost be malpractice not just to throw that argument out there and see if it sticks.
If I was Josh Gordon's agent, Rosenhaus, that's exactly what I'd be saying. I'd go, what, Roger Goodell? I'm sorry. Next time, instead of smoking pot, my client will beat his girlfriend up, and then this way we can have a shorter sentence. I would totally throw that at him, and I do believe that the media. This is where we can have fun, we can talk, and people do this, LeBron James this and all the forget the sports talk stuff. This is where the media and their voice needs to be used because it shouldn't just be me. It should be, and I know it's not. It's not in any way just me. It should be everybody. When you have a voice, use it. Yeah, let's have fun and talk about sports, but put the pressure on the NFL that's unacceptable. And I do believe that will come, whether it's from outside groups, sponsors, the players union. In the next negotiations, they will change that. That is one of the problems. John McMullen and I talk about this a lot, and they're hamstrung by the policies that have been collectively bargained. These aren't necessarily arbitrary rules that you can just change. But at the same time, this is the judgment of the commissioner. Like with Ray Rice, if you're going to say that what he did, what he was actually convicted of, didn't warrant a suspension, then don't suspend him at all. But don't hide behind that and suspend him for only 2 games. If you believe that there's a reason to suspend him, then 2 games wasn't enough. It was either penalize him accordingly or don't penalize him at all.
Right, and that would have been even more egregious. And it just jumps out at us considering, the difference between those two things, considering how we're such rivals with the Ravens, how it's such a one-on-one matchup of important offensive cogs. And if Gordon ends up missing 16 or even 20 games compared to 2, that's just going to cause me to rip what's left of my hair out.
You know what's funny is if you go Google search and you go to a couple of Baltimore Ravens fan boards, there's more threads and comments about the guy urinating on Modell's grave than about their boy beating the crap out of his woman. And it's just funny the things that bother people in Baltimore. But anyways, I'm just taking a shot. But seriously, I'm really disgusted with the NFL and what they did there. I didn't even plan on going there, but I'm glad you brought it up because I will take no absence of opportunity to bash the NFL for that. Let's get the focus back on the Browns and on training camp here. Let's look at some of the position battles because there's a lot of them. I guess we'll save the we've really talked about the quarterbacking to death. We can save that for last and throw anything in there. But let's start with the guys protecting the quarterback because I would believe that there's going to be competition here at the right guard and the left guard spot. And you've got a group of 4 or 5 guys that are in the mix for this. You've got the newly drafted Joel Bitonio, who I believe ends up with one of those jobs myself. You've got John Greco, who's pretty effective. Paul McQuiston, who they just signed in the offseason. And I like him because whether he starts or backs up, he can play 4 out of the 5 positions on the line in a pinch if you need him. You got Garrett Gilkey, and then, of course, Jason Kingston, who's had some health issues that have stopped him in the past from locking down the job. But look at the depth. I kind of like that grouping of 5. I think you've got some decent guard depth now this year. Talk to me about those guys.
Right. I think as long as those guys stay healthy, I think they're all going to gel together and give you something good. I think the best case scenario would be for Greco and Bitonio to be the starters. If Bitonio can step up and show that he's ready to start his rookie year, that would really be a huge coup. And if you talked about the versatility of McQuiston, if you can use him as your backup and be able to fill in, give people a break here and there or just be ready in case anybody gets hurt, it would be much better to have him as your 6th or possibly 7th lineman rather than have to count on him to be a starter. And, of course, if Pinkston could come back from his injury, that would really, really be helpful. But I would love to see Bitonio step forward and just grab that starting spot as a rookie. In fact, we're going to be talking about some of these different matchups. There's a lot of cases in which rookies have the chance to come right in and grab an NFL starting job. And I just hope that they have the wherewithal and, of course, the talent to do it. And we're really going to see how well Ray Farmer did it at the draft very, very early, because there are chances for rookies to start and possibly to excel. And if they do, that's going to make him look like $1 million.
Well, for sure. Nationally, everywhere, a lot of people raved about the drafting and the positioning of getting Bitonio because of his ability to do just what you said, come in as a rookie and start. The Browns every year, they preach, all teams preach about open competitions and the ability to compete, and we've seen those rigged competitions here in Cleveland. But even when you do have legit open competition, when the depth isn't there, it doesn't matter. And so I think that's the difference, is look at those guys. I mean, basically the guys that have started or have rotated in that position are fighting for being the backups here. I mean, you've really, I think, upgraded the competition, which can and I like John Greco. I've liked him ever since they signed him a couple of years ago. I remember when they signed him, a lot of people were like, who is it? I believe, was it St. Louis? I think it was St. Louis that he came over from, wasn't it? But I just remember he was a big boy, and I was talking, I think we were on the air, I think, the night that they may have signed him, and I like him. But I like Bitonio, and I like McQuiston's versatility there, which is key because nobody stays healthy, and these guys are not going to stay healthy. And I like having a guy like that that's been on a quality team and a championship team that can do that. I like the competition there for those 2 spots. I think you've obviously, got your tackle positions and your center, and I think those 2 fill out the line, and that's going to be key. But everybody on the line is starting from scratch here because you're learning a completely different system. It's that Shanahan system, the zone blocking that we know that they're famous for all over the years. And so everybody kind of no advantage, almost like we talked about, the square one for the quarterbacks because they're both learning the same system. Same thing here, a new blocking system. So there's no real incumbent's advantage, which is why I think Bitonio ends up with one of those spots.
Yes, I can see that happening. It's going to be interesting to see, how well McQuiston and even Gilkey can put up a fight to try to get some of those reps, and Pinkston as well. But yeah, it does seem like Greco and Bitonio probably have the inside track. And we have, of course, Thomas and Mack are going to be the main men on that line, but this is, we always talk about how important the offensive line is. This is really a huge year for the offensive line, not just to, protect both of the quarterbacks, but also to maybe establish this team with their running game identity. And, because this isn't this, and we're going to get to this, but this is not a team that's going to wow you with a bunch of great wide receivers. So you've got to have the offensive line hold up in order for the Browns to accomplish what they want to do on offense in the absence of a bunch of great receivers.
For sure. And I'm interested, too, with the running backs that we've got, and that we'll kind of segue right into that position. But with that zone blocking scheme and the new, looking for the one cut and up the field, I'm very interested to see if they can establish a running game. I think they do. I said it a few months ago. I think the Browns, I don't know where they finish yardage-wise, but I definitely believe they're top 5 in the league this year in rushing attempts. I expect to see them definitely try to. They think that's a strength. I think that's going to be a strength, and I think they're going to lean on that regardless of who the quarterback is. And Ben Tate and Terrence West. I was a little bit. I can't lie. I was a little bit nervous because I was just making fun of Marcel Darius the other day coming in and failing his conditioning test, and then for a day, Terrence West was not on the he was on the unable to practice list, but he's good. He's cleared. He passed his conditioning test, so maybe that was just a rookie thing. He wasn't ready for the conditioning.